Hi everybody, very welcome to Mentour, yet another video podcast. As always, I hope you're all doing fantastic. So, today on the podcast, guys, we are going to talk about if all pilots are safe and if all pilots are equally good. Right, the reason that I'm raising this is because I've had a lot of questions on this subject and also because of the horrible Germanwings accident that happened last year. So, what I want to start by doing is I want to show you guys the kind of suitability tests that are being done throughout your training and in the beginning of your professional career and also in the continuation of your professional career to make sure that you are suitable to do this job in a safe way. All right. So to start with, I have always, and I will continue to tell you guys that before you go into any kind of aviation training, I want you to go and do a suitability test. Right. Now, a suitability test is basically a battery of tests that are done by trained aviation psychologists. They will be trained to evaluate you and your personality type and your general psychological fitness to do this job in a good way. All right. This might sound a bit daunting. A lot of people do not like to go through these tests, but I insist that it's a good idea to do. And why is that? Well, basically it's because these tests you will have to do at one point or another. If you don't do them before you start your training and before you start paying a lot of money to go into this type of training, you will likely do it at the end of your training when you are going for your first airline interview. All right. So I would say that it's probably better to do it and possibly have a negative response before you've paid a lot of money for your training than after you've done so. And this is why I keep pressing that it's so important to do. Now, once you've done that and you have been green lighted, because the sad fact is that not everyone will get the go ahead when you do these psychological tests. This doesn't mean that it's over for all future. It just means that where you are in your life at that particular point, you maybe you're not mature enough. Maybe there's certain points on your personality that you need to work a little bit on, and you can do so. But as I said, it's better to do that early. Now, if you have been green lighted by the aviation psychologist and you start your training, then throughout your training, you will have. But first of all, your instructors, your aviation instructors, will be evaluating you during your sessions when you're flying. They'll be looking into how your stick and rudder skills are, but also how you handle when you're under stress, when you're doing exercises that might be a little bit more advanced. They will see how you're reacting to it, and they will debrief you on what you need to work on, what you can do better, and what you're doing well. Right? So that's how the aviation training works. Now, at different stages in your training, you will do tests to make sure that you're following the curve that is expected. And of course, at the end of each training part, so at the end of your private pilot license, your CPL, your instrument rating, your MCC, not your MCC course actually, but all of the others, you will have a skill test. And a skill test, they will also evaluate that you can do all the exercises to the standard that is needed, but also how you as a person are and how if you are dealing with stress in a good way. So basically the whole of your training is going to be full of these little exams and little tests that you need to do. So that's the first part of the screening. Then, as I was saying, when you start looking for that precious first job, and most of you guys who are out there looking for jobs now can testify to this, first of all, it's really hard to get that first job interview because there's generally quite a lot of people with very little experience who are looking for these jobs. So the airlines will pick and choose which ones they think are best. They will take them in for an interview. And at that interview, it's very likely that you will have to do these kind of psychometric testings and suitability testings to see how your personality type is and if you're suitable. Okay. So that will be the first job that the airlines do to make sure that you are safe or potentially safe to do this job. Then, once you have been accepted and you've gotten that precious first job, then the airline training will commence, and that normally includes things like a type rating. In a type rating, you're also evaluated on your handling skills, of course, but also your ability to learn fast and your general suitability psychologically wise. You will have a skill test at the end of that, Then you will have line training, and in line training it will also involve a number of tests to make sure that you're following the curve and evaluating. We will be helping you out. This is not like you can get that you fail at each and every step. No. You will have help. Once you're in, you will get help to get through all of this in a good way. But there are also a number of mechanisms there to find out if there's someone on the way into this occupation who probably shouldn't do this. Okay. So once you have gotten that first job, you've done all your training, you're out online, then, as I've been saying in previous podcasts, you will have recurrent training and checking. Every 6 months there is a recurrent training and checking event, which you will have to show that you have maintained your skills and that you are developing in the way that the airline thinks that you should be. There's also something called a line check. So on top of the simulator checks that you do twice a year, you will also have a line check, which is you flying in a normal line environment with a trained line training captain behind you who's evaluating yours and your colleagues' skill and how you're working together as a team. You will be debriefed on that, you will be told what you can improve, what you're doing well, all of that, just like in most jobs, I would say. Right. Now, on top of that, you also have medical tests, and the medical test does, if you look back in history, hasn't included much of psychological evaluations, but it's likely that after the German wings disaster, there will be some kind of psychological evaluation involved in the medical examinations as well. Now, the medical examinations has always been based on honesty. It's always been based on the fact that if you are medically unfit, you have to tell the doctor that is the case. In most cases, that means that you have to be stepping off the line, be sick for a while, make sure that you get the treatment needed, and then once you're good and well, you'll go back to the aviation doctor and you'll get your medical certificate back. That is also the way that the psychological part of this have to work. Okay, it is very, very important that you as a pilot, if you feel that you're not feeling well psychological wise, this might be because of a death in the family, it might be because of a breakup, it might be because of divorce or economical problems, things like that. Anything like that can plunge any person, and pilots are normal people just like everyone else, can kind of plunge you into a period of psychological non-well-being, basically. And it's really important that if that happens and you feel that this will have an impact on the way that you operate the aircraft, that you also step aside. You talk to your aviation doctor, or you talk to your base captain or your chief your chief pilot, and tell them that, listen, I'm going to have to step away for a while to get better. Get the treatment you need, get better, and then you get back on the line. This is where the system failed a little bit in the case of the German wings accident. So I'm not going to go too deeply into that, but because of that, there are likely to be some changes happening in the future when it comes to medical evaluations. Now, the second question that I wanted to tackle was, are all pilots equally good? Now, that is a really, really hard question to answer, because what is good, right? You might have one pilot who is extremely good at stick and rudder skills. She could land the aircraft in any type of weather, in any type of crosswind, but they might not be as skilled when it comes to communicating with their colleagues. Is that a good pilot? Okay, I don't know. Then you have the other side, which might not be good at all on stick and rudder, but is really good at communicating these problems, really good at delegating, and can handle the aircraft safely, enough to stay within the requirements needed to pass the skill tests and the operator proficiency checks and so on. So what I would like to say is, to be a good pilot, you have to have a combination of all of these things. Of course, you have to make sure that your stick and rudder handling skills are up to date, but you also have to be fundamentally aware of your own weaknesses, and we all have weaknesses, okay? The day that you feel that you don't have any weakness, then it's probably time to step down. All right? You have to be aware of what you're good at and what you're less good at, and you have to be able to communicate this with your colleagues So and also be able to delegate things, So if there's something that you're not as good at, maybe it's a good idea to hand that particular job over to your colleague, or communicate at least that, okay, now this is something that I haven't done before, I haven't done this for long, so make sure that you monitor me when we do this. You have to be honest, both to yourself and to your colleague when you're in this job. You also have to maintain good technical knowledge, good procedural knowledge. You have to read up on the procedures, because if you don't, it means that no matter how good you are sticking rudder, your colleague will not know what you're doing if you're not following procedures. And no matter how well you can fly a non-precision approach, the day that you have a technical failure and you do not understand what systems are involved or why, it doesn't matter how good you're flying, you're still going to muck it up. Okay, so this is why you have to maintain your skill set at a high level throughout your career. This will never stop. You're going to have to keep reading up on things, keep studying all through your career, and you have to be honest about your weaknesses, and you have to be able to communicate well with your crew. Now, the answer to the question if all pilots are equally good, of course not, But because of the very stringent systems of testings we have, you will have all pilots that are flying the aircraft that you are on board up to a minimum level which is very high. Okay, so the pilots that are flying the airliners that you are sitting on board with will have passed all of these tests that I was talking about earlier in the podcast. They will have continuously been checked and rechecked every 6 months to make sure that they are up to scratch. And they are being checked on some quite hard maneuvers to do. So yeah, there might be people that are good and there might be people who are very good. And in what part of that spectrum you are depends on how diligent you are when it comes to studying and being professional. Okay, but yes, pilots are generally, because of all of these things I've been talking about, safe to fly, with some horrible exceptions that we have talked about, like the German wings, but they are really, really few. It's almost impossible to have a foolproof system. But the system, the way it works now, works very, very well indeed. And anytime that we can see a way to improve the system, we do. Okay guys, I hope that was helpful. I hope you liked this podcast. Make sure that you subscribe. Make sure you tell your friends about this podcast. Make sure you check out my app, my Mentour 360 app. If you want to see what the future of flight training looks like, that's what it is. So for now, I hope you're doing fantastic and that you'll have a great day, and I'll see you next time.